So I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Stephen Moore, and I've been with the company now for about 15 years, educating physicians about Pharmanex and how to integrate it into their practices. On today's webinar, we have Tanner Gibb, and Tanner Gibb's with corporate. He's the technical communications manager. He's part of the global research and development team. He presents at our national conference quite a bit. He's one of the most requested presenters that we have. He just has a really great way of educating people. And today he's going to go over a little bit about fish oils and what sets Pharmanex apart from a quality control standpoint. So Tanner, thanks for being here today. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Stephen, thanks to you for the invite. Happy to be here and talk about fish oil. It's not the most exciting topic, but it certainly is important. And we do have fish oil, and there's a lot of companies out there that have fish oil, and they sell it and market it for different reasons. And a lot of the companies tend to say the same things, right? Just because claims are regulated. But there certainly is a difference in terms of just, the quality of the fish oil that we sell versus, any other company out there for that matter. And so we'll talk about that and talk about just some of the specifics and the benefits of omega-3s. And let's just dive into it. So we do have several different products that we sell that contain our high quality ultra pure fish oil. Optimal Omega right there, Marine Omega, Age Lock Youth, and Life Pack Nano. And some future products that we're working on and developing will have fish oil as well. One in particular is Mighty Minds. It's going to be a kid's soft chew that we can talk about more later. But for now we have Optimal Omega. This is kind of your basic, your most cost effective fish oil product that we have. It comes in 60 soft gels, and it has vitamin E included along with some garlic. Marine Omega has 120 soft gels, and it comes with fish oil and a little bit of krill oil and some vitamin E to prevent oxidation. The krill is it has EPA and DHA, but it comes in a unique phospholipid form that the cells recognize because they're made of phospholipids, and so there's some better absorption there. And krill tends to protect the DHA, one of the important omega-3s, against oxidation and being used for energy in the body to be able to give that straight shot and that straight benefit of DHA to the brain and to the eye where it's highly concentrated in the body. And so Marine Omega is going to be another high quality option for those looking for omega-3 fatty acids. Age Lock Youth is kind of our flagship product. It has a lot more than just fish oil, but it does include our ultra pure fish oil along with many other ingredients. And then Life Pack Nano. It has all your essential vitamins and minerals and 60 plus antioxidants, including the omega-3 fatty acids included from fish and krill oil. And so these are the major products that we have that all sell this ultra pure fish oil. Ultra pure is actually, to be able to make that claim, it has to have stringent requirements in terms of how pure the fish oil is. And so it's not just some made up marketing term. It actually is a seal of approval, if you will, to be able to claim ultra pure, and I'll talk about why that is. Just some general understanding about omega-3s. A lot of people believe fat's bad. I think that's more consumers. I think more of our, the smarter consumers or the more educated consumers understand that fats are actually good. The government used to. There were some older studies where they showed that fat could increase cholesterol, and then cholesterol was linked to heart disease, and so they said, well, fats are really bad, and so we should lower fats. And so all these, low-fat diets were the big fad of the day back in the, the 90s and the 2000s. And of course, we're learning in nutrition science that, this idea of avoiding fats or low fats isn't ideal. And not all fats are created equal. In terms of omega-3s, they are super beneficial for you. And we'll talk about some of the health benefits of omega-3s in a bit. Some people believe that all omega-3s are equal, but they're actually very different. You have ALA, EPA, and DHA. EPA and DHA you're going to get primarily from fatty fish. So these are things like, salmon and anchovies and mackerel and things like that. ALA is more coming from plant omega-3 sources. So things like, flaxseed or canola oil or soybean oil or other sources like that. Some people, ALA, I should mention, has a very poor conversion to EPA and DHA, which have are much more studied for their benefits in terms of cardio protection and blood pressure, triglycerides, all the cardio related things, circulation, brain health, eye health, etc. Most of the studies on the benefits of ALA really do piggyback on the benefits of EPA and DHA. But when you look at the studies and the conversion ratio, It's usually about 0% to 21%. Most people recognize about a 10% to 20% ratio in general. And so, in other words, to get the same amount of EPA and DHA, you have to be taking at least 5 to 10 times that amount in ALA. And so there's a very, very big difference. And you can't just substitute ALA for EPA and DHA. That's why a lot of people say, well, why can't I get the omega-3s that I need from just plant sources? Why do you use animal sources, right? Why do you use fish oil? It's because EPA and DHA are really well studied for a lot of known benefits, and you just can't get that same benefit from ALA. The conversion is very poor. Not everybody needs omega-3s, right? Well, false. Everybody does. ALA is actually an essential nutrient because your body cannot produce it. EPA and DHA are not considered essential omega-3 fatty acids because your body can convert at least trace amounts from the ALA, but we do believe that they are conditionally essential because of how important they are and the roles that they play in the body. And so, and in terms of how much we're getting, it's not very much, and it depends on where you live. If you live in, for example, Japan, studies show that they typically get about 1,000 milligrams a day, which is actually a good healthy dose. But in America, we're actually very deficient in our diets. We get about 100 milligrams a day of EPA and DHA, and generally recommendations vary from about 500 milligrams to 1,000. And so we're about 20% to 100% short in terms of the level of omega-3s that we need to be getting in our diet on a regular basis. And so, in that regard, they are essential, very important nutrients, and we're very deficient, especially in the American diet. Unless, of course, you're eating fatty fish on a regular basis, right? The other myth is fish oil is not well studied. It actually is well studied. There's a number of different studies, over 30,000 plus, which we'll highlight in my next slide, of how well fish oil is studied for the benefits that it provides in the body. And jumping into that slide here, let's just touch on briefly. I just mentioned that there's over 30,000 published studies on EPA and DHA. And, when I put that together, it's actually a little bit ago. And so those numbers, continue to rise. There's probably new studies that are being published on a regular basis, if not almost daily, on just the benefits of fish oil that they provide. In terms of its benefits in heart health, there's a lot of different mechanisms at play there. Reducing triglycerides is one of the major proven benefits of fish oil. But in order to receive that benefit, typically it's recommended to get at least a minimum of 1 gram of EPA and DHA a day. If not, 2 grams is going to be more ideal. Most of the studies use 2 grams or above to be able to have a clinically effective reduction in triglycerides in the body. Triglycerides, as you know, there's some of the blood fats that accumulate from poor diets, from processed foods, from excess carbohydrates. And so, that's just one mechanism by which these omega-3s have a cardioprotective role in the body. Another one is going to be through its benefits on circulation and blood flow throughout the body. The ability of omega-3s to inhibit, these platelets from sticking together can help to improve circulation, not only to the heart, but also to the extremities. I've actually noticed in my own life when I take adequate amounts of fish oil, and I do on a regular basis because I know how important they are. My circulation improves, and my extremities are improved too, and that my hands and feet are usually cold if I don't get enough omega-3s and other ingredients that help to improve circulation in my body. Maybe another key and core benefit is going to be through its mechanism of managing and mitigating inflammation in the body. Inflammation, as we know, it's a super critical part of the immune response, but when it becomes chronic or when it gets too high or dysregulated, that's when it's really bad, and it's linked with a lot of different chronic conditions. In fact, there's really not a chronic age-related condition that I'm aware of that doesn't have some kind of inflammatory dysregulated component to it. And so omega-3s are generally known and famously known in many studies for their ability to mitigate many aspects of inflammation in the body, as opposed to omega-6s, right? Which omega-6s you're going to get from a lot of the fried foods and other lesser quality oils in your diet, French fries, all that good stuff. That's in general, it's an oversimplification to say this, but the omega-6s are generally pro-inflammatory, and then the omega-3s are generally anti-inflammatory. And so you do need both in the diet, but generally, at least in Western diets, the omega-6s are by far outweighing the omega-3s. Ratios are estimated to be at about 20 to 1, if not 30 to 1, where we're getting way too much omega-6s, causing this chronic and causative inflammation that's damaging our bodies, are weakening our immune response, causing pain throughout the body, and so on and so forth. And so that's one of the other mechanisms whereby the omega-3s can have a nice protective effect on the heart and on other benefits, joint health as well, right? Inflammation is a key mechanism involved in protecting our joints, and if you have too much omega-6s, it's going to be wear and tear and havoc on those joints over time. I think those are the main mechanisms that I wanted to highlight here in terms of just heart health, and that's just one of the benefits that omega-3s are providing. Another key area of research, and the number of studies just continues to grow, is in terms of its benefits on brain health and eye health. When we talk about brain health and omega-3s, some of the major mechanisms are going to be through obviously mitigating the inflammatory response. Inflammation is linked with some negative cognitive abilities and executive processing of the brain, even in terms of just the memory and the mood concept. There's going to be some benefits, nice benefits there with omega-3s, and it's growing blood flow to the brain. Omega-3s can help in that regard, and in that sense, it's going to be good, for cognition and memory and other brain functions too. In terms of just the brain and the eye overall, when we talk about the different, EPA and DHA omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil, the DHA in particular is really highly concentrated in the brain and in the eye. And that's why it's kind of a no-brainer why there's many studies and why there are some protective benefits in the brain and in the eye, in terms of just you think about these omega-3 fatty acids and what they do. They play an important role in the structural integrity of the cell. And what I mean by that is that you have cells, and then you have membranes around those cells. The membranes are kind of the protective layer that protect the cell. It's what allows stuff in and out. And so because they play that structural integrity role in the cell membranes and cells throughout the body, what they do is they help to control a lot of enzymatic reactions, a lot of the fluidity of cells, and a lot of what's transported in and out. And so in terms of just eye structure and protection, it makes sense that it would be good for keeping those eyes nice and moist and healthy and with visual function and acuity, especially in different light settings. And in terms of the brain, like I already mentioned, just the circulation and the inflammation, in terms of cognition, executive function, and memory, and even mood as well. And so a lot of really, really nice benefits there with omega-3s. And there's other areas that it continues to be studied today. One thing that I'll mention here before moving on actually is that a lot of people do ask me about just the studies and the evidence for omega-3s in terms of cardioprotection, because a lot of the earlier science and studies showed a really, really nice cardioprotective benefit of supplementing with fish oil. But some of the more recent studies aren't confirming some of the older studies. And so people ask me, well, why is that? What's going on? And there's many reasons that experts believe. One is that, when you compare some of these older studies, they were taking fish oil, and back in, maybe the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, these people, they weren't taking as many medications. They're not taking, their statins or their ACE inhibitors or their blood pressure medication or their, just all these medications start adding up today. And so, how much more benefit can you expect fish oil to provide on top of taking, 2, 3, 5, 10 plus, medications, all protecting the cardiovascular system, right? Another key differentiator is going to be the length of time of these studies. How much benefit are you expected to see in terms of, cardioprotection or mortality when you do a study that isn't long enough, right? If it's just, 6 months or a year or even a couple of years, it's hard to replace, the benefit in the body of just, wear and tear on the body for, 60 years and expect to revert everything back to normal, within a year or two with starting to take a fish oil. And that's why the importance of nutrition is, the earlier the better in terms of, protection and benefiting the body. Another thing that I'll mention here is that the observational and the cohort studies on fish oil consumption and fish oil supplementation are very, very, very positive. They show very clear and almost conclusive benefits in terms of their cardio benefits on things like, blood pressure and triglycerides and circulation and other aspects of cardio health. And so it's almost a better indicator when you look at the nutrition data of these long-term observational studies, even though they don't show cause and effect like a randomized study will for a drug. It's almost a better model in nutrition to be able to evaluate the benefit of nutrients. One thing I'll mention about some of the brain studies, because people ask me that all the time as well, is some of the studies show benefit, others don't. Why is that? Well, in terms of the brain and cognition and preventing cognitive decline and some of the memory and the mood benefits and boosting benefits of the omega-3s are dose dependent. When I look at a lot of the studies and some of the reviews, it's really about 1,000 milligrams a day of EPA and DHA, in particular high levels of DHA, that show really nice concrete benefits in terms of the cognitive benefit and the brain health benefits of fish oil. For some of the lower dose studies, that's usually where they don't see as clear of a benefit. And so dose is also important when you evaluate studies and the benefit that they provide, but also in recommending a dose to your patients or to other consumers and people. Okay, this is actually a very important point that I want to highlight here. Is we have many different omega-3 products, but the Optimum Omega, the ageLOC Youth, and Marine Omega are all very complementary to our LifePak product. And the reason is that these carotenoid antioxidants and other fat-soluble nutrients, so vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K, they need fat in order to be absorbed effectively, right? Hence the term fat soluble, right? They solubilize in fat as opposed to water soluble nutrients, things like the B vitamins and vitamin C and a lot of the polyphenols and flavonoids. Those are water soluble, and so they solubilize really easily in water, and they're generally absorbed a little bit better and more easily by the body compared to some of these harder to absorb fat soluble nutrients like carotenoids and those vitamins, in addition to CoQ10. And there's some really nice research, and this is just one example of just a hypothetical. But generally, when you look at the research in terms of better absorption, you need about 3 to 5 grams of a high-quality fat source like fish oil in order to maximize the absorption of these carotenoids, which are very super powerful antioxidants, and other fat-soluble nutrients for that matter. And so when you look at the percent improvement, it's usually, when you look at area under the curve studies, it's usually about a 2-fold to a 4-fold increase in total absorption over time when you take these fat-soluble nutrients with a fat source compared to without a fat source. So it makes a very big difference. And this is why I don't recommend any one of these products without taking them with LifePak. LifePak to get you that foundation of vitamins and minerals and other antioxidant nutrients, but to maximize the benefit of that high-quality product, I always recommend it with one of these other fish oil products. The reason I didn't put LifePak Nano on this slide is that LifePak Nano kind of has the best of both worlds in that it comes included with the omega-3 fatty acids from fish and krill oil, plus all the other vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and carotenoids. So it comes included in all together. People ask me all the time, why anchovies? And I should state, anchovies is the primary source of fish oil that we use in all of our products. There is going to be very trace amounts of bycatch of other things like mackerel and sardines, but anchovies, by and large, are the vast majority. And so why is that? Well, as you can see here, they're small fish. Small is good in the ocean because small fish, and they're more bottom feeder like fish, they're going to eat stuff at the bottom. They're not going to accumulate toxins from the medium fish or the big fish. In fact, the medium fish, they get all the toxins from the environment, plus the toxins that they accumulate from eating the small fish. And the same thing with a large fish, right? They're going to consume all the toxins from the medium and the small fish. And so small is going to be good in terms of just overall purity and the quality of the fish. They're also very short-lived fish. When you compare anchovies to other things like salmon or typically bigger fish that live a little bit longer, anchovies are advantageous because they don't have as long of a life to be able to bioaccumulate excess toxins over time. They're also very naturally high in EPA and DHA. And so these are just some of the main reasons of why we use anchovies. As a company, you should know that we're actually very committed to sustainability and quality. And there's a few key points that I want to mention here. First, about our krill oil, and then secondly, about our fish oil. In terms of our krill oil, as you can see here in that little red dot, we actually are a krill oil provider It catches the krill in a certain location next to the Antarctic, so in the Antarctic Ocean, if you will. And it's actually a very certain region or area of that particular destination. Some people are concerned about, just overfishing and overtaking, the krill and the fish in the world, which destroys the ecosystem and so on and so forth. That's not happening here. It's actually a tightly regulated process. And in our particular region where our krill oil provider is getting their krill, only 1% of the biomass is allowed to be harvested to not damage the ecosystem, to not damage the number of new krill that are produced in the area. And so it's a very healthy, very sustainable environment, and it's a very tightly regulated thing as well. And I should mention that even though the allowable catch is only 1% in the area, the reports of what is actually harvested is actually much less than 1%. It's actually about 0.1%. So we're using very little of this concentrated area of krill. Secondly, there is a nice harvesting technology that our krill oil provider uses to be able to reduce bycatch and reduce and limit oxidation in the krill. It helps to preserve the natural ecosystem of the ocean. But the thing that I really love about it is that they actually utilize these specialized nets to be able to catch, the krill oil and just to catch the krill, and reduce the bycatch of other fish to just preserve the nature, preserve the ecosystem a lot better. It's actually a really unique system of how they of how the krill are sourced, how they're put on the boats, how it flows between the boat and the nets. It's a very carefully controlled process that helps to, like I said, reduce oxidation, which is important, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but also just helps to preserve the environment overall. And the certifications, our supplier, it was actually the first to receive, it's a very prestigious award. It's called the Marine Stewardship Council. It's about sustainability and a little bit more, to be honest with you, but we just wanted to make sure that we're doing things right. And that's part of the reason why we actually partner with companies that do things the right way, that do things well. We know sustainability is important to us, but also to our consumers. Now onto our fish oil, which is kind of the primary source of omega-3s that we have in our product. We have very strict sourcing standards. As you can see, we use wild caught, not farmed anchovies. This is actually important to us because although farmed fish tend to have the advantage of being a little bit higher in EPA and DHA, of course it depends on what the fish are fed, the disadvantage of farmed fish is that they generally are higher in contaminants, especially PCBs. Okay, so these are hydrocarbons that are they're not good. They're toxic to the body in high amounts, and so purity is actually one of the staples and one of the most important things that we consider when we source fish oil around the world. As you can see there on that little red dot, you can see that it actually comes off the coast of Peru. These are primarily Peruvian anchovies. The reason for that is that it's a very fresh body of water. It is tightly regulated by the government in that area as well. And so only, certain amounts of the fish oil of the fish is allowed to be caught and harvested. Only so many boats at certain times of the year are allowed to actually go out and to harvest the fish. And at the other time, I should mention, there's actually a really nice rift in the water there that keeps the water in that area very, very clean and pure. Even the temperature in that area of the ocean is regulated. And so all of these regulations go into place to be able to make sure that we're getting just, the high quality, these Peruvian anchovies from the right location at the right time to be harvested and to be collected and put inside of our products. That leads me to the next point, vertical integration. Not a lot of people understand this or know what it means. This just means that our supplier has full control over the entire process. They're big enough and they've been around long enough, and that's part of the reason why we partner with them, is because they do things right and they can see and oversee the entire process from the fishing boats to the harvesting to the transport to the manufacturing plants and to the processing of the fish oil. And so because they can oversee the entire process, there are very tight controls along the entire way to be able to reduce oxidation, improve the quality of the fish oil. And maybe now that I mention oxidation here, maybe it's important to point out that, oxidation is where your fish is exposed to high levels of oxidants that come from, high temperature, comes from, air or oxygen, right? It can come from, from other sources as well, like sunlight, for example. So there are many steps along the way to help prevent oxidation in terms of, protecting the fish against sunlight, protecting the fish against, high heat and high temperature. There's there's actually multiple purification processes. So after the oil is, after the crude oil, after it's, harvested, it is refined to be able to concentrate the EPA and DHA. It is distilled under a low vacuum, meaning that it's using very, very low heat. That's important to help reduce, oxidation and keep the fish oil very fresh, very high quality. In terms of limits, maybe I'll mention it here really quick. Oxidation of fish oil, when it becomes oxidized, that's usually where you get, some of the bad taste of fish oil, some of the fishy burps of fish oil, but also it reduces the shelf life of the fish oil. And so reducing oxidation is very critical. And the GOED has a monograph. They're kind of the global organization that sets standards for fish and fish oil and other omega-3 products. They set a standard of for peroxide value to be 5 and anisodine value to be 20. I can't give you the exact number that we set ours to, but I can tell you it's much less than that. In fact, it's less than half of the minimum standard that they recommend. So just to give you an idea in terms of oxidation, the limits that we have in place are more strict than even the most strict regulation that exists in terms of the industry and trying to keep a high quality fish oil throughout the industry. Okay, certifications. Our particular supplier of fish oil was the first to receive the Friends of the Sea certification for sustainability and commitment to natural resources. This is a little bit more commonplace nowadays in terms of fish oil providers, just because they're realizing that there's value in doing things the right way and getting certified. The fact that ours was the first really kind of shows that we're going with the standard setter. We're going with the best of the best, and that's why we actually do pay a premium for the quality fish oil that we get, because it's certified, it's vertically integrated, super low standards in terms of oxidation, and also in terms of purity that I'll get to next, because I believe that's one of the most important things when it comes to quality fish oil, right? It's all about how pure is the source that you use. And so in order to achieve that, you have to start with a high quality source. That's the reason why we use, anchovies. They're small, they're short-lived, they're from the purest waters, and they're from, fresh waters. In other words, they're not farmed. So they're free living species, and it's super critical. In terms of purification processes, there are proprietary things that we employ, like I said, distillation, they're winterized, and there's some other purification processes that the fish oil goes through to be able to make it as pure as it is. But the pure source to begin with is by far the most important criteria when it comes to that. And so that's why we're so proud of why we use what we use. But beyond that, in fact, Pharmanex is famous for this. All of the quality criteria that we go through is really extensive in terms of the stuff that we do and the specs that we set, but also in terms of the testing that our manufacturer has to do. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but for every Pharmanex product that we sell, including every product with fish oil, we actually require a certificate of analysis from our manufacturer for our internal records. But on that certificate, we have to verify and approve of that batch before it actually goes out into the public. And so what that means is we have all this criteria in terms of, as you can see here, heavy metals. It includes harmful microbes. It includes other quality parameters, things like weight, the physical condition, the look of the product, the visual inspection, the disintegration to make sure that it's going to dissolve and disintegrate properly so that you absorb, the ingredients that are inside of these capsules or these soft gels. And so much more I should mention, especially making sure that it has minimum levels of these omega-3s. In our experience in the industry, often what we'll see is that there's an acceptable range of these omega-3s. So it could be a little bit higher, a little bit low. We actually have minimum standards to be able to guarantee what you see on the label. So each and every batch, what you see, that's the minimum of what we standardize our product to be able to guarantee that even at the end of shelf life. Doing stability studies, we do accelerated stability testing on our fish oil products in high temperature and high humidity to be able to estimate how stable the fish oil is in terms of oxidation over time. That's why we add the vitamin E to help prevent oxidation on top of all the other steps in the process, but also the omega-3s and everything else that's in the product. We also do real-time stability testing on our fish oil products and everything else that we sell. The real time is pretty much where you put a product on the shelf and you test it at different intervals, including at the end of shelf life, to be able to guarantee full potency and full safety of all the specs that you see here, in addition to others that we have on our internal documents. One thing that I'll mention here about heavy metals, because that's one of the big concerns about fish oil in the industry. And I'll mention that, a lot of companies, in fact, most will say that, well, they have very pure fish oil, right? Well, what do you mean by pure, right? To what level are you talking about in terms of purity? So when we talk about the GOED monograph, so this is this global organization for omega-3s, the monograph and the minimum specification that they recommend is going to be 0.1 for arsenic, 0.1 for cadmium, 0.1 for mercury, and 0.1 for lead. What I'll say in terms of our specifications is that we meet or exceed by large measure those standards, especially in terms of mercury, because mercury is one of the contaminants or heavy metals that we really wanted to make sure that is either not present or even not detectable. I can tell you I've seen many tests on our fish oil products, and even with our ICP units that use hot magma to fragment the particles and try to detect some of these very small things like heavy metals and mercury. Many of our tests, even to coming to parts per billion like testing, is non-detectable. So to be able to not detect mercury in your fish oil is actually a nice thing to really see, to really help confirm how safe and how pure the fish oil that we sell is. Weight is another important thing. I'll mention it here because we have, like I said, the minimum standards, and of course omega-3s, they have a weight applied to that, and so we test the weight of the final product to make sure that we have the right number of soft gels in the product, but also to make sure that they have the right amount of the different ingredients that go into the formulas. The physical condition, that's important too, to make sure that the soft gels, they're not sticking together, that they have, the right amount of moisture, pretty much, which is limiting moisture to make sure that they don't stick, but also, the look and the feel. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen it before about how a soft gel is made in the facility. It's going to be hard to describe without actually seeing it, but pretty much you have the whole the soft gel, and the ingredients are put inside of it, and it covers it or wraps it very quickly, and so it's actually a very soft material at first, because it warms up to be able to wrap it around and then seal it tightly. And so to make sure that it has the right shape and physical condition, that's just another spec that goes into place. Disintegration, E. coli, bacteria, salmonella, coliforms, yeast, mold. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want a product that has high levels of some of these other things. Some of the other things that aren't mentioned here in terms of specs that our raw ingredient supplier has are going to be things on PCBs. In fact, there's testing on all 209 different PCBs that exist. I'll just mention the GOED monograph is 0.09, and that's milligram per kilogram, which is the same thing as microgram per gram. Just so you know, just a reference point, that's to the parts per million level. The spec that we have from our raw ingredient vendor is much lower than that in terms of PCBs. Dioxins and furans, this is another spec where the GOED has 1.75 that's allowed in terms of picogram per gram. Ours is going to be less than that. Dioxin-like PCBs, the GOED has a minimum limit of 3. Ours is going to be lower than that. There's other things on the list that aren't even required in the GOED voluntary monograph that we actually have specs for. Things like DEHP, brominated flame retardants, some for PAH, and I'm trying to give you a little bit of context here to be able to understand that, we talk purity, but we actually back it up. There are the most strict regulations around the world, and we meet, and in most cases, far exceed, these minimum standards. And that's because, we believe in quality. It's part of our success quality process. That's part of, who we are. We don't just talk it, we actually do it when we make these products. Just in closing, I hope everyone gets a little bit of sense of the purity and the quality of fish oil that we have in terms of just extremely low rates of oxidation and low rates of allowable, heavy metals and toxins and other contaminants, because we believe that purity and quality are at the highest levels. And I hope that everyone takes, a fish oil product. If you're not taking it right now on a regular basis, you should be. I am, for all the benefits I talked about. We just need to be doing it.
All right. Well, Tanner, thank you so much. I take the Life Pack Nano and the Age Lock Youth and the Vitality. My wife has suffered from allergies for a long time, and she's noticed when since she's been taking those products, allergies are gone for the most part, and no allergy medication, feels great. And so, yeah, I mean, you can definitely see the impact when you can control inflammation in the body, which we know is one of the root evils that causes disease and all kinds of complications. So fish oils are super important, and we definitely don't get enough of them in our diet. And I am very confident in the science and the quality. I've been to some of those detailed presentations. A lot of people don't get to hear the details, but it's nice to know everything that you guys are doing. I know you're doing a lot more than you're able to go through. So Tanner, thanks so much for joining us on this webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll look forward to having you on another call soon.
You're welcome. Take care.
Yeah, take care.